Hey, everybody, and welcome back. So, Danielle Smith is now calling for a referendum in October to ask a question if they should continue on the path of doing a proper referendum on to separate, which is insane. So, she's put herself in quite a mess here. She's created herself a monster that she doesn't know how to tame anymore. She's got no control over it. Ever since her party has reduced the requirements to get a referendum, a constitutional change referendum, from 20%, which was 580,000 signatures within a period of 90 days, down to 178,000 signatures, which was 10% of the potential voting population, within 120 days. So she made it easier. And this is what I don't understand is her and all the other separatists, what I call traitors, and I'll get to that why I call them traitors, is if the majority of the Albertan population really want to separate, why was it crucial to reduce the requirements to get a referendum, a constitutional referendum change from over 500,000 signatures within 90 days down to 170,000 signatures within 120 days? Because if there's a lot of people, they should have been able to meet that initial requirement, no problem. These Canada Strong, Stay Canada group who want to stay with Canada, they got over 400,000 signatures, no problem. Where the separatists got 300s, and it's questionable because they had access to a voter registry. So we don't even know how many of those signatures were falsified. So she's got herself into a big pickle here. I want to listen to her little 3-minute speech, and I want to go over to the multiple different contradictions she did within that 3-minute speech of hers about why she's calling this referendum.
Ready to go? All right. Well, hello, everyone. As many of you know, last night I delivered a televised address regarding the debate that we are having in our province on the future of Alberta and Canada. First, let me say I'm fiercely loyal to both Alberta and Canada, but I truly believe that our country is so much stronger and more prosperous when we respect the rights of provinces and empower them to govern themselves with minimal federal interference. We have an incredible future.
Translation is, we want to do whatever we want, and we want the federal government to stay out of our way. Provincial governments have the ability to govern on their own. But at the end of the day, when the federal government has a policy or a law that one province or maybe two provinces out of the entire country don't like, doesn't mean they're getting in your way. They're doing the best for the entire country. And if anybody understands what being a leader is you're not going to be able to please everybody. So just because you don't like something doesn't mean they're getting in your way. And this idea that she's loyal to Alberta and Canada, since she would not have reduced the threshold to be able to call a referendum on a constitutional change. So don't give me this idea that she's loyal to Canada as well.
Ahead for our country and province. We are turning the tide on the last 10 years of disastrous policy from Ottawa that held our province back. Now we have a federal government that is starting to work with us in the spirit of cooperative federalism to undo the damage caused by the previous government. I've been clear with Albertans from the start that I support remaining in Canada, and that has and will continue to be the position of my government and my caucus. Now, to the referendum.
Again, I'm going to state this again. You want to stay with Canada, you're loyal to Canada. Of course, you're loyal to Alberta because you're the premier of Alberta, but you're loyal to Canada, you want to stay with Canada. Then why did you reduce the requirements to get a referendum for a constitutional change? Your government did that. From 580,000, 20% of the voting, of the voters, potential voters in Alberta, within 90 days to get those 580,000 signatures down to 178,000 signatures within 120 days. So you extended the period with less signatures. That's a huge difference. That made it very easy because at the end of the day, the separatists had no chance in getting 588,000 signatures within 90 days. Even though they boast that the majority, like I always get these statistics that 50% of Alberta wants to separate. That's millions of people. And you guys couldn't get 588,000 signatures in 90 days? That Danielle Smith had to reduce that requirement, give you more time with less signatures. That aside, this idea that you guys got 300,000 signatures when you had access to a stolen voter list, when the Stay or Canada Strong, Stay with Canada crowd got more signatures than you guys, you're a minority. And the only way you guys were able to get heard was for Danielle Smith to change the rules for you guys.
Question on October the 19th. To those Albertans wanting a binding separation referendum in October, this simply isn't possible. With the recent court ruling, there's no legal way to hold a binding separation referendum. If the binding stay or leave question had been put on the ballot, it likely would have been struck down by the courts within a matter of weeks. And Elections Alberta would have been legally barred from including the question on the referendum in October entirely. Now, it may take a year or more to appeal and reduce the judge's erroneous decision, and until then, a binding referendum held by Elections Alberta, as I say, is simply legally impossible. And I'd want to also re-emphasize that you don't have to agree with the court's decision. As you know, I certainly do not. But that is how our justice system works. It is binding law at the moment. Now, for those Albertans who don't want a referendum at all, it's important.
So I agree with her and the separatists on this part where I don't believe the judge was correct. Like, I understand the judge said will infringe on the Indigenous rights, but at the end of the day, holding a referendum, if they met the requirements, please understand if they met the requirements, which I really doubt they did, but if they met it, they went through the signatures, there was no counterfeit and everything else, and they got actually over 300,000 signatures, let them have that referendum. Let them waste that money, because at the end of the day, they would still have to go and consult with the Indigenous communities. It doesn't mean they're moving forward and actually separating without their consent. It's like doing paperwork. There's no legal process where you have to go, what doesn't show you what steps you have to take, where you get the signatures, or you need the Indigenous community there. You got to get them signed off on first, and then you get the signatures. You can do multiple stages or multiple steps at the same time before you get to the final stage. So they would have won their court case, but Danielle Smith is cheating for them again. And there's reasons why, that she's giving them what they want without actually going through the process of the courts to get their referendum legally to have their question asked.
Important to note that 700,000 Albertans signed one petition or another asking for a referendum on this issue. We cannot kick this can down the road. We need to get direction from all Albertans on this matter now, not 3 years from now. Now is the time for Albertans to decide whether we want to spend the time, expense, and effort pursuing separation, or whether Albertans want to remain in Canada. My position is to stay.
Okay. This 700,000 signatures that they got, and she's talking about both sides wanting to stay and wanting to leave. The reason why you have 700,000 because those additional 400,000 that want to stay, they signed that petition because of the noise that the separatists were making that they want to separate, that they were saying we represent the majority of Albertans. So they had to counteract that argument with saying, no, they don't represent us. They don't represent the majority of Alberta, and the majority of Alberta wants to stay. So they had to do that, because if the separatists didn't have a campaign for this referendum, those with Canada would never have needed to sign those petitions to show that the majority of Albertans want to stay. So this idea that it's an argument and this and that and so on and so forth, that we need to put this to rest, you only need to put this to rest is because you now have a deal with Mark Carney. Now one hurdle's been alleviated, a big one in your mind. And this stability or instability needs to be put to bed, because what company, what nation, what organization would want to invest in Alberta that wants to separate from a stable country that has no access to the sea, water, or anything like that? How are you going to finance the separation? How are you going to have a currency? What country is going to start trading with you when you've left with no finances in order? She needs the stability. That's why she's putting this to a test with the referendum question, so she could put it to bed. But this is going to be a problem for her and her party eventually. We'll get more to that.
I believe Albertans should remain in Canada, and I would ask that all Albertans join me in voting to remain a province of Canada. But that doesn't mean that we accept the status quo from Ottawa. We will continue to work on undoing the last 10 years of damaging Trudeau NDP policies and fight for a stronger Alberta within a united Canada. And we'll find out what Albertans think on this matter on October the 19th. Albertans will decide. Not politicians, not the courts, and certainly not the Ottawa pundits. Again, the choice is simple. It's either...
So before she talks about the two questions, she played both sides there, where she wants to stay with Canada. Again, because she doesn't want to be a leader of a province that's separate from Canada that's now been destroyed. No one's going to invest in Alberta when they want to separate from Canada. But now she's talking about how we still need to make sure we fight Ottawa on all the damage that they've caused in Alberta, to please those separatists that are still angry that they believe she's capitulating to Ottawa and not becoming a traitor. The only damage that's in Alberta has nothing to do with Ottawa. It has to do with the leaders, because at the end of the day, the premier of Alberta has the majority of the control of what goes on in Alberta. The federal government only makes federal laws and federal mandates, okay? Now, you can say some of those mandates, like the environmental laws, things like that, hindered you guys from making money, but you guys were still making money hand over fist, not as much as you thought you would be. Your leaders, Danielle Smith, has lied to you, saying the reason why we have shitty healthcare is because of the federal government. Why our infrastructure is failing is because of the federal government. How they're taking your money and redistributing it to the other provinces, which it should be yours because that's your hard-earned cash. Guys, you pay federal tax and you pay provincial tax. The federal government can do whatever they want with that money. They could burn it if they wanted to. That's their prerogative. What Danielle Smith has done with your provincial tax is a crime. She's now creating a two-tiered healthcare system, which is going to cost you guys more in the long run. Your infrastructure has not been maintained correctly with all that oil money. What about all those oil companies that have gone off and not having to close down old wells? There's like a fund where they have to pay into, so that if they go bankrupt, they're no longer responsible for closing those wells. They've reduced the amount that have to go into that funds. You've got oil companies that are not paying their leases to farmers. And this is an oil-rich province. You guys got problems that have nothing to do with the federal governments. And it's Danielle Smith and her government that's responsible for those policies that allows the oil companies to take advantage of the Albertan people.
Option 1, vote to remain in Canada, put an end to this debate, and fight to make our province and country stronger and more unified. Or option 2, vote to commence the necessary, albeit lengthy, legal processes, appeals, and other steps needed to legally separate from Canada, including a binding referendum that complies with the Constitution. The choice is ours. You know where I stand on this question. I believe Canada is working better every day. And that it can work even better in the future if we keep fighting together to keep Alberta and Canada forever strong and free. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions.
Okay, so at the end there, she's basically told you separatists that thank you for causing aggravation for Mark Carney, the threatening that we're going to leave. I don't need you anymore because I got what I wanted. So she's created a monster. So the separatist group are not happy with Danielle Smith. They believe she's like capitulated, that she's now part of the problem, that even if they get blown out, which they will on the referendum, that they're not going to believe the vote. They're going to think, it was rigged, the votes weren't counted correctly. They're going to make some sort of excuse because they're just as crazy as MAGA in the U.S. They're working with MAGA affiliates in the US. That's why, in my mind, they're traitors. You can have a problem with the federal government. You can say, I truly want to separate. But as soon as you start going to work with a country that is actively hurting Canada, you are a traitor. So Danielle Smith is the only reason she's doing this is to try to silence you separatists now. Saying, I let you speak, I let you have your soapbox, present your grievances. I'm still on your side. I'm going to help you continue to fight with those evil liberals in the federal government. But the rest of Alberta wants to stay, so we're going to put that to bed. Because I need those investors, oil company investors, to want to be able to invest in a new pipeline once I convince BC and the Indigenous communities to allow me to do that pipeline, because no company is going to want to do that. Invest in a province that wants to separate. So she's trying to silence you guys. And because of that, because they're angry with you or with Danielle Smith, they're not going to be happy with the results of the referendum come October 19th. They're going to start their own party, or they're going to try to take over the UCP by bringing candidates to run as MLAs in Alberta. And what that is going to do is split the UCP votes. And that's going to allow the NDP to get a minority/majority government in the next round. That's if Danielle Smith doesn't have her way with redistricting and gerrymandering the new ridings that I hear is going on in Alberta. But she's created a problem for her and her party and for the stability of Alberta. Because if the separatists still continue to make noise, it's going to be very hard to bring in investments. Talk to Quebec. Ask them what happened after their referendum. Even though it narrowly succeeded, it narrowly failed. They lost, I think it was like 0.5% or whatever it was. Like I think it was 50, just over 50% wanted to stay. Ask them how many industries left Montreal, Quebec, and went to Toronto, even to Ottawa. How many industries left Quebec and lost a lot of jobs there, even though they stayed. So this is going to have a ripple effect. And of course, Danielle Smith is going to continually blame the federal government. Trumpian move. This is just another Trumpian move. And are we surprised? No, because she went down and met with Trump in Mar-a-Lago. Probably got some ideas of how to deal with the federal government. try to deal with the federal government. But in the end, it's only going to hurt her, her party, and the province of Alberta. While the rest of the world moves on. It's kind of a shame. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you think in the comments. Take care. We'll talk later.